Another short tape. World War II once again. Italy, up through Germany, into across France, or those in the Pacific who fought on the islands in the different invasions in Iwo Jima, in Okinawa. When you think that there were 16 million Americans in uniform then, 16 million of us. We had a draft, sure. But I'll bet you if it was a totally volunteer, that we still would have had close to those 16 million, maybe 14 million. That was how we felt in those days. We supported our country. We may not have been the same political party as the president, but when the call came, we obeyed the president. We were unified under the president. We may not have agreed with every decision he made, but still in all, we had that unity until we won. Until the battles were won and the war was won. Yes, we lost a lot of battles. We read about them in the paper and we heard about them on the radio, where our aircraft carriers were bombed and sunk in the Pacific, when battleships sank, when cruisers sank, when convoys were attacked in the Atlantic. We knew what was going on, and yet we were entirely willing to serve because we were the saviors of Europe and of Asia at that time. Believe me, we were. And we could be the saviors of many other countries today if we had a more unified feeling, if we had more people that understood what was going on. But anyway, what did we do, for example? Day after day. Let's say it took 6 weeks to get from the United States in the convoys, and of course the convoys went pretty slow because the fastest had to slow down to the speed of the slowest ship. And we were zigzagging so that we weren't going in a direct line from, let's say, here to the Straits of Gibraltar. We had to change course every so often. That was so that if we ran into a what we called a wolf pack, a group of submarines, they would usually have to plan their attack well in advance. But if they were in position to fire their torpedoes and the convoy suddenly changed direction, they couldn't move fast enough to make the necessary changes in their plans. So they often would have to wait till night and then surface at night and try to catch up with the convoy and get ahead of it again. But what did we do day to day? Well, we read a lot. I think almost every sailor I knew read a great deal. We had libraries on board. They weren't the best. If you wanted certain books, you had to bring them along. Like I bought a copy of War and Peace before our trip to Russia. We weren't supposed to know where we were going. We were supposed to, all that was supposed to be secret, but yet when you get bundles of warm, cold weather clothing, when you get fur-lined caps and fur-lined vests, you know damn well that you're not going to the South Pacific. And so I surmised that our trip was to go to Murmansk, which at times was the most hazardous trip that you could take. So I bought books to read. I bought War and Peace. I bought Karl Marx's Das Kapital. I never read the whole thing. I read pages of it. I bought Hitler's Mein Kampf at the same time. And I bought a good dictionary because I wrote home often. And I read a great deal. But then we'd sit in, for example, in a stateroom, and we'd tell jokes. We'd tell stories. There were seaman stories. They'd talk about women. Some guy maybe got a letter from his girlfriend. Dear John, I'm sorry, but you're gone and I found a new boyfriend. So we had to commiserate with him. I got one of those letters myself when I was over in the Persian Gulf. You were too far away to do much good to make the lady change her mind, right? And then, of course, the sailors stood watch. Didn't matter whether it was a storm, icy winds. Didn't matter how rough it was. They had to get out on deck and stand watch. And they did. And if there were problems, sometimes a wave would cause damage. They had to get out in the storm and secure the damaged area. And they did. They were pretty brave men. But they didn't consider it bravery. It was all part of the job. And they did their jobs. They did whatever was asked of them. They did it when they were called to do it. And there were times when it required special effort and someone would volunteer. You say, well, that was part of being a sailor. That was part of going to sea. That was part of the war. But sailors often have hazardous jobs, hazardous things to do in peacetime. So we played cards. We didn't gamble a lot, but we played cards. We played cribbage. Man alive, you could always find someone wanting to play cribbage with you. You could always find someone who thought he was better than you were. And we had Monopoly. We played Monopoly. But a deck of cards provided many, many hours of entertainment. We didn't have to have, there weren't TVs in those days, but we didn't have to have all those gadgets. A little box with a deck of cards. Carry that with you, and you had hours and hours and weeks of entertainment. You learned to amuse yourself. You learned to enjoy life. You learned to enjoy it without anything. Lie in a hatch cover late at night when you're in the tropics. Watch the mast weave around in the stars in the sky. See a shooting star. Just lay there and think. That's all. Can't be happy just thinking? I can. You can't be happy sitting alone? I can. You can't be happy without music blasting in your ears? Well, I can be happy without it. You can't be happy without gadgetry? I can be happy in a room all by myself. I can be happy in a room with only a book. And that's what all of us learned when we went to sea. And I talked to some of these old salts, these old sailors. They still can be happy today without all these gadgets. Oh, I know how to use the gadget. I can be happy using my camcorder, but if I didn't have it, I wouldn't miss it. I could be happy without it. Well, anyway, I'll say goodnight for this tape. Bye-bye.